Hey Bob, what's going on? It's Carlos.
Carlos, I
I've
was
been
just
trying to
sitting
get a
on.
hold of you for the last 45 minutes, pal.
I know. What are we doing today? I'm having quite an adventure. Yeah,
Hey,
man.
how you doing, everybody? This is Carlos Castellanos, founder of Drawn by Success, and the co-creator of the syndicated comic strip Baldo. And I'm here with my buddy Bob Ostrom. How you doing, Bob?
I'm doing great, Carlos. Yeah, we had a little bit of an adventure this morning trying to get this thing started.
Well,
Um,
yeah, I mean, I had my iMac's crapping out on me and getting really slow, and it's been giving me a lot of problems this morning. It
oh
took me
man.
15 minutes
Oh
to just
man. Oh,
start
I
up
feel
and
you.
had to restart it and reboot, and it's still kind of sluggish. And now I'm on my laptop, so I don't know how that's going to work out for this show, but we'll see.
Well, so far so good, right?
Yeah, 45 minutes later,
45
trying to
minutes
get this
later.
started.
Yeah, man. It's all good. It's all good.
So anyway, just wanted to quickly just throw out a Friday hangout. Usually Bob and I just kind of talk, and we forget to kind of record these things, but actually we just talk during the week and when nothing's recording. So, but anyway, came across an interesting piece that Tom Richmond, a lot of you know Tom Richmond as the cartoonist for the Mad magazine. He's a great caricaturist and great artist. He had posted something earlier in the week on Facebook and on his blog about a client that he had, and maybe in some of the changes that some of the clients are requiring in illustration and working with him. And I thought it might be a good conversation for us to have, and maybe for some of the folks to kind of listen in on, since we weren't able to prepare this properly and people kind of join us. But yeah, I just wanted to talk about a little bit about the state of illustration and some of the changes that are going on. Now, in regards to Tom Richmond, the piece that he wrote, it was about a client that he has been working with for the last few years. He's probably done, I don't know, I can't remember the number. It was like maybe 60 to 180 or 120 different illustrations for them. But the client is basically a publisher that creates these posters that go into businesses, and they're usually talking about safety issues, teamwork, that kind of stuff. You're familiar with that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. You had mentioned this, and we were talking about it a little bit before we got together about the different expectations that come now with a digital world versus a printed world, all that kind of stuff. So you were mentioning that things have changed. The expectations from his client to to what they need. But he's not alone. This kind of stuff is going on everywhere. When you look at what's happening now, even with the children's publishing industry, we're looking at getting into ebooks and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's changing rapidly, and it's sometimes it's a little bit difficult to keep up with.
Right. Even in editorial, it's changing. Where an editorial illustrator would have just done a flat piece for the magazine. Now with a lot of the digital versions of the larger magazines, they're requesting that they have other things that they're able to, because they're able to do more, obviously, with a digital version of a magazine. They're able to do animation and fade-ins and fade-outs, and they're asking illustrators to come up with extra elements to the illustration that make the whole visual a little more appealing, more dynamic, so it's not just static, because it doesn't have to be anymore. But in talking with in the article that Tom had written, that client that he had that produces those posters that they spread out all over the offices about teamwork and so what have you, they've gone now. They requested that he not do them as a flat piece of illustration any longer, because they are no longer printing them out. They're setting up monitors in the business, like a screen monitor, like maybe in the break room or maybe a couple of different areas where the workers congregate, and the images that these posters would have been printed on would be scrolling through the screen. And so they don't want static images anymore. They want to be able to animate them a little bit. So before, where he might have had a group of office workers sitting behind desks in the background, and then maybe a flustered boss in the foreground, and maybe something crazy going on in the background as a static poster. Now they want those elements separated so that they can bring them in, fade them out, and create a somewhat of a simple animation out of it to make it a little more dynamic. And he was talking about that, and that he was talking about how that adds about another 25% to his workflow as far as time goes, but that they're not paying him more for it, which I found, I guess I've read a lot of articles in regards to editorial illustration, where people are moving from having the static illustration in a printed piece to the more the online digital version of a magazine, and people complaining that people clients aren't willing to pay more for having those extra elements drawn, which is a little bit concerning. But I mean, it's one of the things we have to look at.
Yeah, and I love the idea of the things getting to move around and that kind of stuff. But when I think about the extra work, there is a lot that goes into that. Where you have to draw each and every piece separately and allow it to animate, that kind of thing. I did work in an animation studio for a while. I don't know if I ever told you that. Probably about 10 million times. But yeah, working in an animation studio, I can really truly appreciate the amount of work that goes into animation. It is just time consuming, So it's hard to keep up with that stuff. Well, you and I were talking about some of the ways that you might be able to adapt with that kind of thing. And one of them was creating a library.
Reading that piece that he wrote. I mean, Tom's a savvy guy. He's in this for over 20 years or whatever. So I can only assume he did ask for more money. Mm-hmm. But if you're caught in that situation, don't be afraid to ask for more money. I mean, there is more work obviously involved, and you can easily point out to a client where the extra work is going. And it doesn't take a brain surgeon to be able to figure out that there is a lot more work involved in that. Mm-hmm. But one of the upsides to that is that instead of if he's drawing all these elements, where in a traditional illustration you'd have a lot of the elements being obscured by things in the foreground, and you don't have to complete all those the art for all those different elements. Now what you have is, I mean, if you want to look at the bright side, looking to make lemonade out of lemons, is that you have full assets that you're developing. So if you have things in the background that didn't have to be completed before, and now you're having to complete them, you can then at least be comfortable in the fact that you can use these assets later and maybe repurpose them either for other posters or other art, because now they're going to be fully fleshed out illustrations, not just pieces that you do once and they're gone forever. You're able to build a library. So that's the upside. Not much of a consolation for the artist that's doing a whole lot of extra work and being paid the same, but at least there's an opportunity there to be able to monetize and reuse those things down the line, so that does save you time and effort, if you can, repurpose those images.
Yeah, and that works well especially for somebody like you who's got a series that continues to use the same characters, similar backgrounds, situations that call for a lot of the art to be repeated, and it needs to look the same. Not only do you want it to look the same, but it has to look the same because people need to identify with it. Hey, that house is here. This is where he lives. This is what his neighbor's house looks like. And if you're going to reuse that stuff, it only makes sense to put together a library. So I'm calling you out, Carlos. Where's your library, man?
Yeah, I've been really slacking on that. Yeah, for my comic strip, I've been really slacking on that. There's a lot of other things that I could be doing that to repurpose a lot of the stuff that I do, and I just kind of get lazy and I just figure, oh well, I'll just redraw it and I'll get to it at some point. But it is something that I need to look at for my personal workflow for the strip. Now I'm not saying that would work for everybody. If you're an illustrator, maybe a lot of the things that you end up having to illustrate, you may not be able to reuse a particular image to kind of incorporate into another project for a while. And I would imagine that you'd have to have a considerable size library before you can start actually benefiting from doing all that extra work. But it's something to look at. I mean, if that's the direction things are going, you kind of have to find the upside on it. And again, I think you still have to be able to push for the extra fees that are involved, or decide whether or not you want to continue doing it.
Yeah. Well, I worked on a series of books a while ago. We ended up doing, I think there was maybe 50 in the series. But one of the things that we did was we used the old animation technique where you create a single background and you reuse it by focusing in on different points of it. That's a good way to kind of get around having to do that background over and over again. It takes a little bit more time up front, but when you use it in that book 3 or 4 times, it really helps save some time. So then all you're worried about is drawing the characters and fitting them into it. Using the same background but fitting them into a different situation.
Right. Yeah. So I guess it really depends on the kind of projects that you're working on. And I don't want to speak for Tom because I don't know enough of the projects and I don't know about what he's doing.
No, and it doesn't work for everybody. I mean, it only works for certain things. I know that the one that we happen to be working on was very cartoon oriented, and it looked like it was actually from a Saturday morning feature. So when you saw those backgrounds, it did make sense to do that. Sometimes it needs to just be more illustrative, and it's just not going to work.
Right. And it depends too. Like going back to Tom's client's example. I mean, it's geared towards businesses, so there are going to be a lot of similar elements to them. As you work through a lot of these things, and I'm sure that after working on as many as he has, he'll probably be able to see where he can reuse some of these things. But if the theme is similar, office environment, that kind of a thing, there's probably a good chance that he'll be able to reuse a lot of those things for future projects moving forward. Desks, people working behind desks, clocks, water coolers, that kind of thing. Bosses, people in suits in that kind of environment, or construction areas, or what have you.
Yeah, and one of the things we haven't even touched on yet is outsourcing. I mean, there is always the possibility to use outsourcing, where your hand as the artist creates the sketches, and then you can always find people to help you with ink or help you with color to meet those deadlines and to get them done a little bit more economically.
Yeah, and that's something that you've done, something that I've done too in the past.
Sure. Yeah, and it works when you need it, because there are times when projects will come in that are just too large for you to handle on your own. And rather than push them out the door because they're too big for you, it makes sense to develop a style that you can work with other artists on. And this is the whole principle behind working in an animation studio. Everybody's working on the same project. You don't think it's just one guy who sits down and draws The Simpsons. It's a bunch of guys,
Right.
And so why not apply that to what you're doing in your studio if you need to take on larger projects? It opens a lot of doors and provides a lot of opportunity.
Yeah, it's funny when we were working on the Baldo animation, when I went out to LA to see the animation studio working on it.
Yeah.
They had the whole studio was working on Baldo. I mean, it was
that's gotta freak you out.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. They had a big poster, a big 3 foot wide or 4 foot high poster of Baldo in the lobby, and then you go upstairs where all the animators are, and everybody's working on the backgrounds, the animators, the storyboard people. And you think you have this unique gig going on.
You see 50 people doing your thing.
50 people doing work, and it looks better than your shit.
So there's a list in there for you.
Yeah,
well, I mean, being on the front end of that is pretty cool, though. I mean, you're the guy who's calling this your project. That's got to be kind of neat to see that.
Yeah, it was cool, but it was at the same time it was a little deflating.
Humbling experience.
I've just been replaced by like 50 people.
They can find people who can draw it. They can't find people to think it. That's it. That's all there is to it.
So yeah, it was pretty interesting. But I mean, yeah, well, that's the point. I mean, you and we talked about this earlier. I mean, this is kind of maybe this is going to kind of elongate our 20 minutes.
We're at 14 right now. We still got 6 to go, man. So.
But yeah, I mean, we had touched upon it talked about it earlier this week in another conversation you and I had about looking at, as artists, a lot of times we look at ourselves as sellers of stuff, like we're selling services to other businesses, and how as an entrepreneur you really and how artists are looking at, because they're selling and they're looking at the competition of where clients, all the availability to talent that clients have these days, and as far as outsourcing sites and all that kind of stuff, they kind of get all messed up in the head a little bit, thinking about, oh, well, it's getting harder for me to sell this stuff because of the rates or because of the competition, what have you. And you're really missing a point, a mindset of coming from an entrepreneurial standpoint that you're not only a seller, you're also a buyer, like what you and I had talked about, where we hire people to help us as well. So while some rates are falling and a lot of people are doing work for relatively cheap, by your standards, there's an opportunity there for you to be able to hire some people to bring in on your projects. It doesn't mean that you can't, bring in projects that maybe are a little lower in terms of fees that you would normally be working on if you were doing it yourself. There was an opportunity there to hire maybe somebody else to get that job done or a portion of that job done at a lower rate, and for you to still be able to get the project done and make some money on it.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think one of the things that we have to contend with now is the availability of artists. There's the competition is a little different than when you and I started. There's not really a guard at the gate anymore, and the playing field is completely level. So there are a lot of people out there that we're competing with. But at the same token, I think once you start to develop a style or you start to develop a market for your work and find places where you can sell your work, it's a lot easier to get it out there than it used to be. It used to cost a lot of money to get your work in front of people. So now it's basically free. So it's kind of a give and take,
Right. Yeah. This is a two-edged sword, right? It's easier to market yourself, and at the same time, it makes it easier for everybody else to market themselves.
Right.
You got to contend with that, and that's where we talk about, differentiating yourself and maybe focusing on not a niche necessarily, because as an illustrator, sometimes it's hard, or an artist, it's hard to kind of really define a really, really narrow niche. But be able to concentrate on 2 or 3 or 4 different areas, where you can do everything, whatever you're capable of, but your marketing focus is on some of those, more focused areas. So you're speaking more directly to client needs, and we talked about that before, but we don't want to get into that one. But I just think there's an opportunity there. Just getting back to the original subject, there's an opportunity there. There's changes, but there's an opportunity there that if you look at it from a different point of view, there's an opportunity there to profit as well. So it's how do you set up your business to be able, if that's the direction your business or your clients are going in, how do you position your business the way you do your illustration and the way you market, what you have, to be able to take advantage of that extra work,
Yeah, it's something that you really have to be aware of and keep up with before the bottom drops out on you. It's tough. It's tough to adapt to all these changes that are happening at such a rapid pace, especially when you're used to doing business a different way. Like you and I are, more old school, and we remember the times when, it was you actually had to go in and visit people and sell your wares by working with them more directly than you do now. Now it's a phone call or an email, and it's done, in a day. Right. So yeah, it's a different world, but I don't know. It's really interesting to see some of these, what some people are doing now and how they're adapting to that marketplace. It seems like there's a lot more opportunity to sell things that are a little bit more, kind of off the wall stuff, that develops like those little niche patterns and things. And people aren't necessarily relying on traditional business. They're looking to fans and consumers that wouldn't necessarily be part of that equation at all back in the day when we used to do it, So right. I kind of like that. I'm seeing that all over the place. I'm seeing these really funky artists doing these really cool things, and they develop these followings, and that's their living now, and they're selling to those people who follow them. So I think that's really cool.
Yeah. So there you have it. Keep an open mind about how your business is moving forward, and not just be creative in the images and the creative stuff that you're doing, but apply that same creativity to approaching your business and where the opportunities are. I think that's critical for all of us. I think we tend to just be creative and just the artistic side, but the creativeness on the business side and where the opportunities are, I think, can just be just as exhilarating as and just as fun as the creative stuff that you deal with on creative. There's our time.
Is that our timer?
We're up.
We're at 20 minutes right now. All right, so let's wrap up. I didn't realize you had an alarm on that thing.
Yeah, man. I wanted to make it nice and loud so we can hear it. We usually go over we say 20 minutes, and then we're talking for like 45.
I know. So all right, so let's kind of wrap things up, and I'm gonna do a shameless plug here.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, so the classes are going great over at Bob Teaches Art. We've had some fantastic students for the past couple of weeks. Thank you for joining me over there and co-hosting those episodes, or I should say sessions with me. We've got one more to go in this series, and then I'm looking to do a couple of new ones coming up real soon. I've got some other things in development. Can't talk about them just yet, but some really fun stuff coming up. I'm really, really happy with the way that site is shaping up.
All right, cool.
Carlos,
So
yeah, so
people, all right, we had two sessions already. The last one was last night.
Right.
If people want to jump on board and purchase the older sessions or the newer sessions, where do they go?
Okay, so here's what's happening. I'm taking the live sessions that we did. I'm going to edit them down and put those up for sale. I've still got one session left in this series. You can buy that as a single session if you want. It's a session about adding color to Illustrator files. They can go and find all that information over on bobteachesart.com. And then I'll be posting information about the new shows coming up. Just opened up a new Facebook group for all my students to get on and to start talking about, what they're working on and what they need help with, all that kind of stuff. So all good stuff, man. All good stuff.
All right. So the deal that you had going originally, where you were selling the 3 as a package at a reduced rate, is that they can't get that anymore, right?
Well, unfortunately, because the first 2 classes are already done, what I'm going to do is I'll take and re-edit those and put them together and sell those as a package later on. For now, the only thing that we have going on right now is that last class.
Okay.
And once that's wrapped up, then I'll put these together in a package, and we'll talk about what kind of deals are going to come up after that. But
all right. So if you didn't buy it before the launch of his sessions for all 3 packages and save the money, then it's too late, man. That's just the way it goes.
Oh man, you would have saved a bundle too. I had that thing. Yeah, I had that thing marked cheap, man. So, so whoever joined me, they got a good deal on those. But I'll look at putting together some deals again. once I get that stuff all edited and put together. But what I'm really looking forward is to some of these upcoming classes. I've got some really good stuff coming up, so I'm excited about it.
Excellent. All right. So if you guys want to leave a message. Maybe some of the things that you guys have been going through, experiencing with your own personal projects and clients, different changes that they've been calling for, either lower rates that they're pushing for, or different directions that they're asking of you to take. Give us a call, or leave a message, because we'd like to hear about it. We'd like to know. I just think it's really interesting. Obviously, Bob and I work in our own narrow areas and with certain types of clients, and I don't have experience with every scenario, so it's always educational for me to hear what other people are experiencing, working with different kinds of clients and different projects. So it helps me learn, it helps Bob learn, and we all get to learn together. So if you guys have anything that you'd like to share, we'd love to read it, and we'd love you to share it with us. So other than that, there's really nothing else other than to just hang up on this call, Bob.
23 minutes, not bad.
Oh, we're over.
Not bad, not bad. All right, Carlos, we'll see you next time. We'll see you.
All right, guys. So if you're looking at this video on YouTube or G+, check us out at drawnbysuccess.com. There's a lot of articles, a lot of interviews there that you'll be able to check out if you're new to us. And just hit us up over there and follow us and subscribe, and so that you don't miss these very intellectual speaking sessions that Bob and I get into.
All right, brother. I will see you next week.
All right, guys. Later. Bye. Thanks again, Bob.